I'm going to shoot through this real quick because apparently my first video was far too long. This is basically going to be a video about how I found or came to Wicca. So basically I started in prison a few years back. Some guy loaned me a book entitled Invisibility, and instead of reading it, because the title was Invisibility and it's supposed to have been scientific or whatever, I was like, yeah, whatever, and I just threw that in my locker. And that's where it remained for about 3 months. And found myself in my room one day. I was bored, didn't have anything to do, so I was going through my locker, I was cleaning it up, and I found that book, and I was like, oh, I forgot about it. So I took it out, decided to read it because I didn't have anything else to do and couldn't make it to the library. Started reading it and actually found it very interesting. There were 4 things that it taught. One was invisibility, which isn't what most people think of invisibility. I wouldn't even teach you about that because it's kind of pointless to have something of that nature. Another thing was how to train your eyes to see auras around people and the science behind that, and that was a cool technique. I never picked it up because I didn't have time in there, and just life has kind of kept me busy. I think I will be doing that this year though, and depending on how well that works, I might share the video and offer some people some suggestions if they like. Well, the third thing was, what was it? Well, how to improve your eyesight. For people with glasses, I can see this as being beneficial. It also helped you make your eyesight far better, even if you had like the whole perfect 20/20 vision. Like my eyesight is barely better than 20/20 in both eyes. It's like 20/15 or whatever that number is. Also, the fourth thing was, what do they call it? Telepathy. Basically what it dealt with was communicating with another person mentally, like having a conversation, and they taught methods of doing that. I don't know how well that one would work though. It seemed pretty well written out, but as far as, you know, it might work to a small degree, but you're not going to carry a whole conversation like that, I wouldn't think. So, but anyway, after that I read the book, I gave it back to him after having that time, and you don't want to borrow people's book and keep it for a long time. But, and he gave me a magazine from Llewellyn, and a lot of you know where that is, or what that is, a magazine that sells books and tarot cards. And so I read what I could, and from there they shipped me to a different prison, and at that prison I wrote down that I was Wiccan even though I wasn't. But from there I got to go down to the chapel and then meet all the other Wiccans when they were having group and meetings, and a lot of those people let me borrow their books. And one of the first books I read was Ray Buckland's complete book of witchcraft, the big blue book. And there were many other books, and there was a lot of discussions going on. We got to practicing outside in circles, even when it was wet or raining. So it was really good to have the group to work with. There was some conflict. We had issues, some of us, among ourselves, which, some drama does go on in a circle sometimes when you get people who are on a big ego trip or power trip. And but I was initiated there by my friend who had been initiated from another member who had went to the church and school of Wicca and completed that course, had his certificate and everything. But before I left there, I did study a little bit of Druidism and study a little bit under the Ossetru, which at that time they weren't considered a religion. They were trying to get themselves federally recognized so they could have their own circle, and we shared our circle with them. Like I said, I'm trying to make this quick, so I'm sorry if I'm just talking a bit fast. Left that prison, went to another prison, and because the federal government likes to ship people around, they think it's funny. And I had to establish Wicca there because nobody had, and there wasn't any Wiccans there, and you know, there were actually two people who were interested, but they never came to any groups or any circles. And one new guy did come in, but for some reason or other, I don't know why, I started teaching him wrong, and instead of really learning about Wicca, he started learning about magic, in the sense that people that consider themselves wizards or whatever learn books of that nature. And he just, I messed that up, and it's a learning process. But two other people did come along before I had to leave prison, and they were very interested, and I taught them what I could. Most of the stuff I had was written down because they didn't have money for books. And people in prison, they need these things. They especially need a high priestess, because there isn't one in there. Also, let's see. After I got out, I studied under the Church and School of Wicca, ran by Gavin and Yvonne Frost, and I think Gavin's dead now. Yvonne might be, I don't know. And they do a thing here in North Carolina, and I'm sure they do it other places, but after you've studied your year and a day, you go out to the beach, and you're initiated as a witch, and you get a certificate for that, and a certificate for completing the year and a day course, and you have, you know, your photo ID from having been in the school. There were a few discoveries I made about myself along the way. As, like I said, I was far too strict in teaching people. Some things need to be lightened up on, and that's one of the things I kind of learned, but I did. And then my girlfriend, she helps me see it, and she's still helping me see it, because I can be a butthole and too strict at times, and I need to take things more lightly and not so serious. Some of the other things I realized, like, you know, I went to church when I was little, but I wasn't Christian. I did things, you know, like how you have a wishing well or whatever. I'd take a penny or a dime, I'd steal that from my mom, and I'd run out to this little stream close to the edge of the woods near the house that we lived in, and I'd throw that in and I'd make a wish. And I thought to myself that fairies or elves that stream belonged to, that my wish would come true. You know, but I didn't think of the wish after that. I generally thought that that was like their little treasure trove, as a stream that they kept neat and clean, and that they would actually receive that money. And at 4 or 5 years old, I don't know where I got that. Could have saw something on TV. Another time, sometime between the age of 9 and 12, I was doing a bit of divination without even realizing what it was back then. There were times I did things, and I did it differently from time to time, but one I can remember really well was that I would take and ask a question in the future, or something that I wanted to know, and while looking at a dartboard, and I would give answers to different positions on the dartboard, and I would close my eyes and I would throw the dart to try and get an answer. And like I said, without realizing, I was doing a lot of stuff before Wicca ever came into my life. So basically, the religion came after, and I was doing what I did. I was living stuff before the religion came along. So just want to share that with everyone, and hope you enjoy it. Thanks.